Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Join me today. He's a pro athlete, artist, director, actor, stuntman, and co-owner at Tempest Freerunning. It's Jesse La Flair. How are you doing today, Jesse?
What an intro. Thank you. I'm doing good. How are you?
So excited to learn so much about you and your rise to the challenge. First thing I'd like to do is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
I mean, yeah, so much of that, it leads into who I am. So I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I grew up in a family of five, right? Mom, dad, and a brother and sister. I was the youngest, but my dad was, he's into like everything motors. So he still does drag race, kind of as a passion. But he's been doing it his entire life. So we grew up with like motorcycles and quads and snowmobiles and all these different things with motors. So I was riding my first dirt bike when I was 3 years old, had my first dirt bike when I was 5. And I think a lot of that stuff obviously led into me getting into action sports and the stunt industry, because really like being put on a motorized vehicle at that young of an age and being given the responsibility of like, hey, when you stop, you have to jump off because your feet can't touch the ground, right? Like otherwise the motor is going to land on you and burn your skin. So I think a lot of that very early on, taking on the responsibility of the extreme world of going fast has probably led me into my career where I am today.
At a young age, was fear never an option for you, or were you one of those types of people that whatever happens, happens?
No, I think fear is a necessity. I think a lot of people try to write off fear as this thing that they either don't have or they've overcome, but like you never overcome fear. If you've overcome fear, then you're just insane, in my opinion. I think what you learn to do is deal with fear in a way that you face it head on. Instead of, most people get afraid and they run the other direction. What you can do is turn the muscle on to, like, when I'm afraid of something, I go toward it and try to understand it, right? Because fear is just a lack of understanding anyway. So I think, going back to like my parenting, I think my dad did a really good job of always sort of explaining how and why things worked or would go wrong. So, we'll probably talk about it again later when we get into parkour stuff, but parkour is so much about like understanding what happens if something goes wrong and how to get out of it. So it's always kind of working backwards. So fear is just like, okay, I don't understand this enough. Let me understand it. And then let's see if I'm still wanting or willing to go in that direction.
When you were doing all the motorsports, were your siblings into those things, or was that something that was yours and you could be able to fulfill that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, that's probably why I got to where I am and with the parkour stuff, is because I was the youngest of 3. My brother was the oldest. He seemed to ruin everything for me. And by that, I mean, he was obviously riding dirt bikes and everything as well. So he would be riding trails, and then all of a sudden he'd be in areas that he's not supposed to, because Long Island's not super woodsy, and all of it that is woodsy is kind of parks. So the cops would come to the house, he'd get in trouble, or he broke his collarbone riding. And so by the time I was like, probably like 12, 13, I was really into like dirt jumping and skateboarding and still wanting to ride. And I sold my motorcycle to buy a new one. And it was almost like my parents were like, nah, you should just not do that. And I was like, man. So I ended up buying another BMX bike and doing that for a long chunk of my childhood too.
Did you have any motivations or inspirations growing up?
In terms of people or things, or
someone that you looked up to or someone that you inspired to be?
I don't know. I think when I try to, because I've been asked this question a couple times now, and I think it's always like, I never really had like a idol. I mean, my dad would talk about people like a Bruce Lee, or these people like this Spider-Man guy who could like literally like crawl up bricks by the tiny bit of his fingers. And like, for some reason, all of that like physical feats always stuck with me. And as a kid, I remember doing like 200 sit-ups in my room, and I wanted to be the most physical fit I could possibly be. And I don't really know why that was. But like, I wanted to be like a Navy SEAL. I'd like handcuff myself and chuck myself into the pool. And like, I'd do all this crazy stuff just to like test my physical limits. And in school, I'd won like the physical fitness award for the most physical fit kid in our 2 grades in a row, and got the presidential fitness award. And I don't know, I was just so driven to be capable beyond the norm that, but I have no idea where that came from. Ninja Turtles, maybe, I don't know. The three Ninjas, that was a movie that definitely inspired a lot of my wanting to do things. Yeah.
What was that dream job that you were wanting?
Yeah, I don't remember ever wanting, like, I had friends that were like, I want to be a fireman. And they're like, I remember saying to my cousin at some point in my backyard, for some reason I could like picture the same, like the exact spot where I was. I remember saying like, I'm going to be a stuntman one day. But I'm sure I've said that about other things, like the Navy SEAL thing, or like there were other things that I definitely leaned into, but there was always a camera in my hand. So that's something that, like, I have video of me like probably 5 years old with a big video camcorder, and I'm like filming outside my grandma's house, and I'm like, oh my God, there's a bear. And I like turn the camera toward me like vlog style, and I'm like, you're not gonna believe this, there's a bear outside. And I like turn the camera back and it's a stuffed animal like on the windowsill. Like, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, who was I talking to? How did I even know to, like, I don't know. I think my grandma did a lot of video stuff like just for the family. So I don't know, she must have taught me something that enabled me to understand when I talk to the lens, I'm actually talking to the people watching the video afterwards. So that's obviously led me into so much of this stuff too.
Did you want to take that and pursue that with cameras and filming and all that through college or through high school and all that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, leading into college, I was filming all the Jackass stuff. I actually produced a feature-length film and got like 600 copies burnt and tried to sell it to all these like Utopia, like weird CD art video places that were around, like almost like Hot Topic style places, but a little closer to Long Island. So there was always like, I don't know, there was a my whole life has always been like, I have passions and I know I can make money off of my own passions, and why would I work a job that I don't want to do? So I worked at a skate park for 6 years as the head camp counselor every summer, and I got paid to do extreme pogo sticking at demos around like the tri-state area. Like, there was all these weird things that, like, I was like, that's fun, that looks like an opportunity I can try to pursue. So I think there was always like some combination of it all, and I think it still is, which is the weird part. It's never really like your intro is like, damn, yeah, I'm never been just one thing. I just have a lot of passions, and I'm just like finding ways to like successfully do those to an extent, right? Jack of many, but I don't know if I'm like, I don't know if I've aced any of these traits altogether, but maybe I need more focus. I don't know.
Well, you talked about how you're able to have that freedom to do what you want and make money off it. Was that always eventually the goal, or did you know, I can't do the 9 to 5 job in an office? I like to have that freedom where I can go do the things that I want to do every day.
Yeah, I still am like fighting with that like idea of like, what is freedom versus like work? Because even eventually, like, your passions turn into, if you turn your passions into work, then where is your freedom? So it's kind of like this very cyclical like scenario that I keep finding myself in, where I drive towards something so much that it becomes the job. And even though I have so much fun doing it, it's like at some point you've like taken away the self-expression part of it. So to answer that, I don't know. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. Just going for it. And yeah, I don't want to ever be locked into any like 9 to 5. I worked at a gallery, and even then, like, I went to college. So I went to college for art. I got my bachelor's of fine arts with a concentration on like, well, in sculpture, but with a concentration on like video projection, like performance. And I kind of made my own category because I just loved video art and like tried to figure out a way to tie it all together. But then, yeah, so I worked at a gallery, and that was like, I got there, I was the head of imaging, doing photoshopping, doing all these things for magazines. And I was like, this still was work. I was like, this isn't fun. What am I doing? And that's when I started to head into trying to find work in parkour and stunts and making movies.
Before you got into parkour, was that did people know about parkour at the time?
No, it was, I've been doing it for 15 years. And at that time, It was pretty new, especially in the States. I think across the seas in the UK, they had Jump London, Jump Britain, these documentaries that kind of came out. We had the Yamakaze showed up in an episode of like Ripley's Believe It or Not, that TV show that used to be out. And that kind of introduced some people to it. And again, it was just a segment of the episode. And, some people never will remember they saw it. And for some of us, it was like, oh my God, I want to do that. I myself, I kind of found some dudes on college campus that were doing it, just like running on walls and stuff. And I had always been doing it. I mean, the Matrix turned me on to like trying to like do Trinity flips off of stuff and wall flips. And so when I saw them doing it, I was like, what is that? And I ran over and I did a backflip off the ledge. And they're like, well, that's cool, man, but we're actually doing parkour. It's about overcoming obstacles, whether they're like physical ones or mental ones. And I was like, wow, you guys are hippies. That's cool. But I went to a hippie school, and no, I was just hearing them say that. I was like, oh my God, they just put a name to something that like I've been doing my whole life. And I think a lot of people feel that way. A lot of adults, like older guys, are like, I used to do parkour when I was a kid. It just didn't have a name. And the truth is that parkour is just playing. It's playing at a higher level. It's challenging yourself. It's pushing your own current physical limitation to see if you can progress a little beyond what you were capable of the hour before you started that new challenge. And having a name to something just gave me more, gave me like permission to try to do it more. And at that time, there weren't many people making a name or a living, and there still isn't many people making a living off of it. But there was enough people when I started to search it and dig that were doing it that I was like, oh, okay, this is like a little subculture. I came from aggressive inline skating, rollerblading. I know what subculture is, and this can grow, and I believe in this. And so through time, yeah, I'm here.
Was there any skills that you had previously that helped you with parkour?
Yeah, I mean, everything, all the action sports leading up to that. Cause I mean, those are all physical, mental challenges, right? Like I was dirt jumping pretty big trails, like 15-foot gaps and maybe even bigger than that. And like you progress, and every action sport you do is it's about progression, right? You can't do a kickflip if you don't know how to ollie, and all these different things like lead you to higher level skills. So you need to know that like I have to be a beginner to begin, right? Like you can't just jump into it and be like, I'm a pro. Like it's gonna take time. And for me, I think all of those other action sports, all the things that I've done leading up to that moment, had given me an advantage because one, I had spatial awareness. I had control of the fear aspect. I knew what my limitations were. I was already, for the jackass style stuff, I was jumping off of roofs, landing in bushes, right? So like once they taught me like, oh, if you can just roll out of this, you actually can just land on the ground from that same height and not do it to entertain people and destroy yourself. So yeah, I think I came into it with a lot of almost experience that helped. And that was also good too, because now I'm not starting from the very, very beginning. I feel like I stepped in and was already able to perform better than these guys that were just starting and trying to get, into this new sport.
Each time that you were doing parkour, was there always a challenge, like a skill that you're wanting to complete at that time, or when you're jumping from building to building, or was there more competitions that you were going for that were helping you challenge yourself?
No, parkour is so much about the inner challenge, the self challenge. It really comes down to like understanding what you are currently capable of, right? So every time you go out to train, you don't have to challenge yourself. You don't have to progress. You go out, and I think you're naturally going to progress, right? Progress because you're moving. Every time you go out and you practice, and we call it training, which is an interesting thing. It's like most action sports, right? Like BMX guys are like, I'm going to go train. I'm going to go ride, right? I'm going to go skate. I'm going to go they go do their thing. We, for whatever reason, because I think parkour was so naturally grew out of, it was never an action sport. If you talk to people even 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, obviously, but they would call it a martial arts. They would not call it a sport. It was actually, a lot of people are still against the idea of it being a sport because it's so inner challenge. So yeah, we call it training because you go out and you naturally are challenging yourself to get better. But no, I think the thing that leads me into like progressing is just, it's being inspired by the environment. I think that's the one thing that I've always found when I go out and I see spots, I let the spot dictate the challenge, right? Because otherwise, I guess really early on, I say like when you're working fundamentals, you're like, it's a very move based. You're like, all right, I need to find a spot to do the Kong vault. Where's the Kong or double Kong vault, right? Now I need to find a very particular spot so that I can learn the skill. But eventually when you learn the skills, it's not then about finding the perfect spot for that skill. It's about finding spots that stretch those skills. And that's where right now is really fun for me, is I go and I try to find spots that most people would never consider a spot, yet I can try to like morph and turn into my own sort of physical painting of my own, movement and body. So, yeah.
What kind of opportunities did it lead to?
Well, I think with anything, parkour in itself never led to anything. It was me taking it to the places, right? Like, so I only say that because I think too many people are like, well, parkour's gotten you to this place. But backtracking, the first thing that really helped break the mold for me in like understanding like, oh shit, I can make a living off of this, is in New York. After college, I went to upstate New York. I then lived in Manhattan for about 4 years. During that time, I guess at that point I was probably training parkour for 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years. I was searching Craigslist, for any of these like job opportunities that are just weird, tumbling this. I actually auditioned for like the New York Knicks tumblers. I'm not a tumbler, so I didn't get that. But I then went and like found like, oh, there's an audition for this Eastman Kodak company, like commercial thing. So I submitted for that. I filmed a video, and they ended up bringing me up to Rochester, New York as like the lead of this like commercial thing. And it was like it's a weird thing because I always call it a commercial because they're selling their film stock. But what they did is they shoot a 15-minute short film to show the different like film stocks together. So they're shooting on real film, 2 cameras at the same time. This is our old film stock. This is our new one. And we want to show buyers the new advantages of the new film stock. But during that, they have an intro video. It's like 5 minutes. And then they go into like details about the stock and then a middle part and an ending. So I was the lead of that thing, leading this character. And it was crazy. It was like the dream come true. All of a sudden, I'm in front of these huge cameras. The guy that's shooting is like the cinematographer for like Freddy vs. Jason and The Secret Window with Johnny Depp. And like, I'm like, this is crazy. So I think just in that moment, I was like, this is the dream, I want this. So I got back to New York. I started taking acting classes. I started looking for anything and everything to do parkour in movies and zombie stuff. And it was just like, yeah, that's kind of it. But so to backtrack, I could have just done parkour, but instead I looked for opportunities that, searching Craigslist for keywords like parkour to find castings really allowed me to get the work to help lead me to where I am today. Yeah.
Did that also help get you into like stunt work and being able to find those job opportunities?
Yeah. So definitely like, that kind of opened the mental door to, I can do this. Right. And then from there it was, all right, I should move to LA, because at that time, Tempest Freerunning had already been formed by the forefathers of the company. And their whole goal was to be like the premier parkour team for Hollywood and also in the sport. And oddly enough, their first year sort of announcing themselves as a team, they won the first ever world championship. And that same month, maybe, did a performance for the Red Bull Taurus Awards and ended up then booking a ton of work, because at the Taurus Awards, it's a stunt award show hosted by Red Bull for years. And they did this giant performance, flipping off of everything. And in the audience is all the top coordinators and stuntmen and da-da-da. So they're watching these young dudes do things that they're like, what? And then they started booking work immediately. So I had sort of taken note of their videos. They're doing the best videos, highest production value, shooting stuff on like the nicest cameras. So they were just like the epitome of like, all right, if I can get on that, that's the biggest pro team I know of in the United States. And they're also doing stunt stuff in the film industry and doubling characters in Twilight and like Transformers. And you're like, this is crazy. So you could dig up an old comment on, I think, Paul Darnell's stunt reel in like, I don't know what year it was, 2000, I don't know, whatever. But I actually wrote on there, hey, Paul, like, my name's Jesse. I'm a parkour athlete as well. And I would love to do what you do one day. And got any advice? I don't think he ever wrote me back, but yeah, it's just cool to know like, hey, I was that guy, right? Like I have kids that message me that all the time. So I get it. And then the real truth is that you can go from that to this and have, whatever, 50 major credits in movies and be making a living off of your dream. You just have to put in the work.
A lot of people know that sometimes you have to make those big risks and move to a different area to find that dream that you're wanting. From you going from the East Coast to the West Coast, was that a hard transition for you? Or did you know that you were doing the right thing for your career, basically?
Oh, it was tough. I mean, I grew up in a family where everyone lives in the same town. Like Long Island is not a small town, but for whatever reason, my family stayed in like, one town over, two towns over. They live next to each other. So like, there's not very many people, and even my brother and sister now live 5 minutes from my house. Everybody lives like so close together. So me moving away was like, I mean, that was a big sacrifice. And then on top of that, you had like, there's a lot of humor in my family, but I remember like our little going away party we had, like people were like taking bets on like when we'll be back. So it's like in this weird way, they're like betting on us to fail and come home. So yeah, it was a tough one. But I think what I knew was that there's not opportunity on Long Island that I want, and there is that opportunity in Los Angeles. And not that it was like I got here and worked. Like I went through some big struggles, and like $30,000 worth of debt, like ups and downs, like boom bop, and it still is like in this industry, you're not really guaranteed anything, right? Like my name doesn't really, I mean, it helps get me work, but it's just like, I don't know. I guess you could always fight for it more. At some point, you just become a little complacent of like, yeah, maybe they'll call or things like that. But I'm actually, just to mention, I'm writing a book right now called How to Become a Stuntman. And if you go to howtobecomeastuntman.com, there's a little quiz that you can take to see if you are right for stunt work. And if you leave your email when I get done with the book, I'll email you when it's done. So anyone that's listening, if they want to go do that, it's a fun quiz anyway. It's not like, even if you have no intent of being a stuntman, go take it. It's kind of you get fun answers at the end.
Going through those struggles, how did you keep yourself positive and keep that mindset going forward?
I don't know. I found very early on, even in New York, I found this like weird Australian woman's like it was all about like positive reinforcements and manifestation it was like you'd listen to this meditation thing, and I remember like I don't remember all of it, but it was made for Hollywood. Like it was like she made it for this stuff. So I've always just I believe a lot in that sort of idea, like The Secret. I don't know if you've read or watched that documentary, but like the idea of like power of thought, manifestation, what you think becomes your reality. And so I always kind of just fall back on that, because once I was sort of taught or learned that your negative thoughts become things as well, that anytime you sort of have those negative thoughts, you can kind of just be like, fake eraser and just, I'm done with that. Let me stay positive and think about what I can do to win again. And yeah, even going into that sort of debt, I think I went that deep in debt because I was just staying positive. I was like, luckily I had credit cards that allowed me to get that deep, but I guess that's maybe, I don't know if that's lucky or not, but, but it kept me afloat. And yeah, I don't know. I just always believed, I had enough of people around me doing it at that point. Now I'm in Los Angeles. I'm seeing all these like people now, I'm working with the guys from Tempest, and I know that it's a reality if I just keep working. And that was the thing that drove me to keep going forward, was like, no, I just watched this thing. I wish I could quote it directly, but this guy was essentially talking about like every entrepreneur's intro into like these three different categories of mental thought. And the first one is like the excitement, because you're naive to all the work and you're like, oh, that's cool, I want to do that, that's incredible, and you start it off, and then all of a sudden it's like the realization of the work, and you're like, oh man, there's a lot of work, I need to learn a lot more stuff about this thing. And then there's I think he called the valley of despair or something like that, and most people get into that spot and it's like, shit, I'm $30,000 in debt, this obviously isn't working, let me try something new. And it's like, oh, look, this thing actually looks fun. And then they create that cycle again until they get back down to the valley. And his whole thing was like, you're gonna get into the valley of despair. It's gonna happen. You're gonna realize like, wow, this is actually takes work, because everything takes work, right? It's not like, you're never gonna find something, even your biggest passion, that it doesn't feel like work if you're just having all the fun. I don't know, I feel like you might be missing out on the opportunity to like make bigger things happen for yourself. So if you get past that valley, you push through it, that's where success really lies. So for me, I guess, looking back on that journey, that's I definitely went through that.
When you moved to Los Angeles, what are some memorable achievements you accomplished during that time?
Actually, I got very lucky. I don't want to call it luck, because I really do believe like I just freaking came out swinging. We got out here, and again, I jumped on all the casting sites, on the non-union casting sites, started doing background work, just trying to like get into my foot in the door. I ended up booking like two small, I don't know, maybe one was like an internet thing. One might have been that movie Sand Sharks, that I did, which was like a sea horror film. Well, I don't know. So it was weird things. But I booked these two things, and I don't remember exactly what they were. And it was like, and again, like I didn't just like submit for two things and booked them. I submitted for like 55 things and booked two of them. And I was like, this is amazing. But that gave me like, yeah, like a little bit of satisfaction, a little understanding. So then I went to, casting directors, started emailing, not casting directors, agents. I started emailing all these agents and trying to get meetings with people. And I think one of them reached back out and was like, I'd like to meet with you. So I looked her up, right? And I went to like her Facebook, almost like just stalkerish, right? Like, let me find out more about you on like a personal level. And this was like the depth of which I was willing to go in a creative third door and try to like, that's my whole thing. I mean, I have a podcast that I just kind of jump in and out of sometimes. And one of the episodes was about this idea of like the creative process and how creative, like the third door, gets you in and out of these business opportunities in ways that no one else is really thinking of. And so anyway, so I'm in this meeting with her and we're talking, and somehow I found out she used to play like beach volleyball as like almost like whatever for a living or career. So at some point I throw out some metaphor about volleyball and and like her ears kind of perk up and I see it like turning on, and it was just like little things like that I was like always trying to be on the smarter side of. And yeah, I don't know. So I got an agent. It just started, the ball started rolling. And what was cool is it wasn't like someone handed me it. It wasn't, I think that probably helped the most, is that I was watching myself achieve and like hit these tiny little milestones, which I know are progressions to bigger milestones.
I think that's definitely important nowadays, where I think some people feel that they want to work for everything that they are given. They don't want to be handed things. And it's kind of that personal satisfaction where you can see yourself growing and getting more opportunities each step of the way. Do you feel that same way, where you enjoy that personal satisfaction?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I had a mentor. Man, I wish I had someone like that helped take me to the next level. And I don't think I've ever, I mean, like I said, my dad early on helped shape parts of me, and having the Tempest guys around helped, you know, give me motivation and understanding what's possible. But I've never had someone like really like, I don't know, help me like just climb a ladder. So part of me like is envious of that. But I'm also, what I like about a lot of what I've done is that after you're done doing it, you know you're capable of doing it again. And you know, when I did 2 world tours, one of which was called Off the Edge, and the other one was the La Flair Lace Up Tour. Now on Off the Edge, me and my business partner Corey DeMeyers, who's an incredible athlete, stuntman, he's the top notch of everything he ever does. But we worked on a lot of that stuff together, and he was so like driven and work, and he helped, actually he was, in some ways he was like he helped shape a different part of me. Like I thought I was working hard, and then I saw Corey and I was like, Jesus, this guy works like freaking 25 hours a day. How is he doing it? And I still think you know, it's like some of it sometimes it's too hard, but he showed me like, oh, you can get a lot done if you just put in the work and sit down and do it. But Off the Edge was a tour that I felt there was so many parts of it that I felt like I didn't do on my own. And so when I came up against creating the Lace Up Tour, I wanted to do it bigger, and I wanted to do it by myself. And I had people that, you know, like Sydney Olsen, who's my teammate, who was like, all right, well, how can I help you? You look stressed or whatever. And it was like, I don't know, there was something about it that I was like, I think I just need to know that I can do this. And I created a 25 stop tour with a tour bus with 13 international athletes, created a whole documentary around it, if I told you every detail of the tour that I created, you'd like, how does this make sense in terms, like even down to like photoshopping, designing the art for the bus, getting the guys to wrap the bus, to discount it and wrap it, and like finding the RV for, it was wild. It was a wild experience. But
so you've had some memorable opportunities on TV. American Ninja Warrior is one of them. Talk about that experience, and what did it teach you about yourself as an athlete?
Yeah, I think Ninja Warrior is such an interesting case study, because it's like, what I loved about it was that it was an obstacle course that we weren't allowed to practice on, and you had to just go out under pressure, you know, performance pressure, and perform. And the most memorable thing was that, yeah, my first 2 seasons, I just like flew through the course, and it was like I had the fastest qualifying time in Los Angeles at whether it was the semifinals or final qualifier, I'm not sure, but it was like everyone else, even now, people are like, I want to get through it. My favorite part of Ninja Warrior was like trying to go through it the fastest I can, without stopping, without thinking, yeah, I think, I mean, you know, looking back, I don't know, it was fun. It was fun. It was highly stressful. At the end of the day, it's a TV show, so like weird stuff would come up where it'd be 2 or 3 a.m. You're about to run finally. You've been there since noon earlier in the day. The course is soaking wet because it's outside at Venice Beach, and the dew is covering everything. And you get up there and you're all like muscle, you're warmed up because they told you to get ready. And they're like, all right, next up, Jesse La Flair. And you like walk up the stairs, and the crowd's like, ah! And you're like, all right, here we go. And then you're like getting hyped up. You're looking at the course. And they're like, all right, Jesse, can you go back down the stairs? We got to do the shot again. You're like, oh, okay. And then you go back downstairs. Here, next up, Jesse La Flair. You're like, no, it's like, it's a TV show. So you're like, all right, now you're starting to visualize again. And like, all right, actually, Jesse, we're going to do our hour lunch break. So cool down, and we'll see you after lunch. And then, so like things like that happen to you, and you're like, the fuck? Like this is not what I anticipated or expected. So what people see is they see athletes up against these physical challenges, but the amount of mental and even physical exhaustion that comes out of like just being a part of a production like that, it's a lot. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. Even, we talk about anything film related, whether it's the movies or TV or whatever. It's all that same feeling. Like it's never just what you see. It's a lot more than that.
Earlier this year in 2020, you were part of a hit TV show on Fox called Ultimate Tag, where you got to have your own persona, and now the show is going global. How did that experience came about?
It was interesting. I actually got reached out to by multiple people, like, and like I said, I've tried to make myself a very loud staple in the sport. So if you look up parkour, you're gonna find me. It was kind of the goal while creating media for the last 15 years. So I had reached, and my teammates were working on it. I actually had a couple of my teammates became producers on the show to help design and work with athletes. And but I got reached out to by the casting that was casting the competitors, and then I got reached out to by the casting that was casting the taggers. So and actually, to be honest with you, even before they did any of this, I was reached out to come help design test the course, but I think I was working on something, so I couldn't. But anyway, so it was almost like I had to work on the show in some aspect. I just had to decide which portion of it I wanted to do. Obviously, being a tagger was like a way more interesting role for me. It meant multiple episodes. It meant the opportunity to go play again, get paid to play. And I was a huge fan of things like gladiators growing up. Again, like, these like top-notch athletes having competitors go against them. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. In the sense that I wanted to do it, but in a sense of it being a job that was worth doing monetarily is actually probably the worst contract I've ever signed in my entire life, to be honest with you. In terms of what they got out of us versus what we could get out of them. And so in that aspect, it's like, but what was cool about it was I was at least in a good enough position to be like, no, I still want to do this because it looks fun, right? It looks like, and I truly believe that it was something that will and probably has helped parkour and people understand what parkour is, especially in America.
Did you have a certain event that you enjoyed or an event that you wish you were able to do? Because I know there are sometimes we didn't get to see everything on the show.
Yeah. And if you didn't, because a lot of my the dome, the floating dome up in the sky, a lot of those got fast forwarded over, but Fox has put up, I think, maybe all of them, at least some of them, a large chunk of them on YouTube. So you can see the extended plays of all the different courses. And it's quite entertaining because I think those ones are even fun beyond the show because the show got polished and it got like turned into TV. And some of those are like a little more raw. They're like a little more like what it felt like being there. So you can almost get like a better sense of like the fun we were having out there versus like, sometimes they turned up the drama a little bit in the edit, and which we're all like, you don't need to do that. This is a fun enough show without it. But no, I got to do all of them. And I always liked the last one, the showdown, just because it was a long course and they gave them a good advantage of like, we had to catch up versus the other ones where we're just kind of like it's almost like toying with them and like, as part of the show, they're like, well, if you can tag them right away, maybe just like mess with them more, so a lot of that sort of happened. But the showdown was always like, I got to get there before I can mess with them. You know what I mean? And we never had extra time. It was like, fuck this, I got to grab this tag because those tags are kind of hard to grab. And you're like, all they got to do is move a little bit and your hand's going to miss, or you hit their vest and all of a sudden you don't have a tag in your hand and you're like, damn it, so.
Well, that showdown, the last event, I always thought whoever, like with you running after them, that was the hard part. But then whoever got to be on the pyramid, the first few episodes, you're like, really? They put her on there? Like, you easily get tagged. But then later in the season, people were getting past them, and you're like, oh, okay. So they have a chance. But I think what the show definitely grew a fan base in a way where people who don't know much about parkour and that far, But then you had talked about the drama, and then you saw like the taggers being dramatic with the contestants. I think that brought entertainment in a way, especially with it being a Fox show. But were you surprised about how big the show became over the course of its showing on TV?
I don't know. I really did believe, like, I was like, this thing's gonna be a hit. Cause we're in the, when we're shooting, all the other taggers are in this like back room and we have monitors and we're like back there like, oh, yeah, like we're losing our freaking minds. So like to feel that energy watching it live, you're like, it's gotta be good when they turn it into TV, right? Cause they can hype all these things up and add the music and add the, so when we were filming, we're like, this thing's gonna kill it. And it did really well. It had a little bit of a drop off, I think, towards the end of the season. We're still waiting to hear back on season 2. Nothing's been confirmed, which is, we're kind of like sitting on the edge of our seat, but yeah.
So how did you get the opportunity to be your own name? Like some other people didn't get their own name. They got a different version, but you got to keep your name and have that kind of persona in a way.
Yeah, I just told him I wasn't gonna do it. Like, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I built a brand around my name, and it's been something that I've been working toward and on, and I always try to double dip. Even in we talk about Ninja Warrior, I kind of made Ninja Warrior talk about my YouTube. I gave them no other option. I created a whole fake thing about the fans wanted me to do Ninja Warrior and I'm doing this for them. And that's why I won. And then, the first time I did really well, I think I was in second place. They were like, we can't really talk about YouTube. And then I was fastest qualifier. And they're like, let's talk about your YouTube followers. Well, same thing with tag. It was like, all right, well, we want to think of a nickname. And I was like, I'm going to go with La Flair. It's a pretty good one. And they were like, all right, well, we could do Air La Flair. Let's do Air La Flair. And I was like, that's cool. But it's still like, now people are Googling a different thing. And I was just like, this, I have the pro signature model shoe in the sport, and they're called the La Flairs, the LF1s. So it was like, I'm trying to drive that search back to the product so that Timbers can make money off of the shoes and I can continue to be a name as, as memorable as me. Plus what it then did was allowed me to be myself instead of, and I talked about it with like the Geek became one of my favorite characters because he was able to like go like just be this like joke and this and that, and at some point I'm like, during the show I'm like, damn, maybe I should have did a persona. That seems a lot more fun. Like I don't have to be me. And if in the show, if someone gets by me or if I mess up, then it's Jesse La Flair messing up, right? It's not like this. So, I mean, the character still got like a little bit more turned up. There was like a little, not cockiness, but a little of that put in there, a little bit bigger and, I'm the best. Oh, look at me, whatever. But they also still like, if you look in the audience, there's like Air La Flair signs, like weird things like, beware of the air. And it's like, what? Did Jesse fart? Like, what the hell is that about? I don't know what that billboard, a little sign is. But yeah, so for me, it was just playing it smart, creatively trying to market who I am, what I do, my brand.
Looking in the future with TV movie, is there any role that you kind of hope maybe it happens for you in the future? Or is it whatever happens, happens?
Whatever happens, happens. I mean, I like getting to play my own characters, like the Hawaii Five-0 chase scene. Like, like I said, I took a year of acting in New York and then came out to LA and did a year or more of acting classes. I don't know if you're hearing all this noise right now, but so for me, I like this idea of transitioning a little bit further into, I don't know, I'm like battling with myself internally quite often right now with like, what is next? Because I'm working on a thing that I won't talk about. I'm like, I probably shouldn't, I won't, but I'll talk a little bit about, it's just more about hosting something. And it's my own competition series that I'm working with someone with right now. And I think that's more of it. I think like, I like being me. I like, so when it comes to like talking and hosting and being in front of a camera, all of that is still very much something that I've done my entire life. So I almost just rather do that. So it's kind of just figuring out ways to like, yeah, what is next?
How did you find more involvement with Tempest Freerunning? As you started, you were just getting your name out there with them, but now you played a huge part in that company.
Yeah, I think, you know, it was that progression thing. I got out there, I introduced myself, I went and filmed a video like the first day. I knew their gym was opening, and it was still not official open. It was like a soft open. I filmed the best stuff I can do, and put it out before they opened the gym, which actually pissed them off. But I knew my friends from New York would want to see it. I knew other people wanted to see it. So like I, again, was just playing like I need views and build an audience. Luckily their video they put out like 3 days later got like 6 million views in the first week. So yeah, they got a ton of press out of their video. It beat Coca-Cola's marketing and did all this stuff. So they didn't seem to care about my video anymore. And that was good for me. But yeah, so it was really just like getting in front of them. I then became a coach. I helped as much as I could behind the scenes, whether they were doing film productions, I'll come hold a light, you know, pull mats for you. And it really just did like some sweat equity, some like just helping where I could. And that then turned into, yeah, I was coach and then became part of the pro team or on the team. And then when they shifted to pro versus action team, I was put onto the pro team. And then Corey and I really just made a huge push to make our names as a big of a part of the sport as we can, as well as a big of a part as Tempest, and really helped push them further. So through that, they sort of recognized like, all right, there's a few people that have done a lot for the company that should be given some sort of ownership stake of the company. And yeah, they let us in.
Do you get a lot of people coming to California to see what Tempest is all about based on your, like, with being like a brand ambassador in some way or your involvement with it, or where they see maybe collaborations you guys have done on like YouTube? Do people
Oh yeah.
want to come and see what Tempest is all about and give it a try?
Yeah, I mean, Tempest, the academies themselves have become their own, like, they're world famous in that sense, especially now that, you know, we've really started to foster to our YouTubers and the people and the creators who come in and have helped market the gym through their videos. So, you know, we started doing things where like, hey, if you have 100,000 followers on Instagram, like we'll add you to our list and you can come in free whenever you want. Just please plug us once in a while. You know, down to like in our southern location in Vista, like the Funk Bros and those guys, we let them come in and do closed sessions. Right, the gym closes at this time. You guys could stay, film whatever content you want. So they started getting access to this incredible $1 million facility for free. You know, we do rent the facilities for productions as well. So then all of a sudden now, you know, these guys are helping market. Oh, this is a dope place to film. Plus, look, if you film at Tempest, you get 50 million views on your video. Well, then other people want to come in, and then that's helping generate some sort of film rentals and things like that. So, yeah.
Did you ever thought that it would get to that stage where you would be working with all these different content creators with that company?
No, I mean, I guess I never really fleshed that out as part of the process, but I think through time, yeah, it was probably visible at some point in my career, because you started seeing little things pop up where people would come in, or a newscaster would come in, or one or two of these, like, you know, like a Corridor Digital or some of these like older YouTube channels that were doing incredible things that I was fans of, would all of a sudden want to come to the gym and needed one of or two of our athletes to be a part of it. And so that reality became quite evident, like very early on, I guess. But now it's people, you realize like, oh, people are coming to the gym at Open Gym to like film videos, and it's cool. It's actually become a hub for like many creators to like meet each other and collaborate, which is cool.
2020 has been a big year for companies all over the world. How has Parkour and Tempest been able to handle everything that's been going on in 2020? Has you seen
Well,
eyes of the sport in a way, or
it's been a mix. I mean, we really did, like, very early on, we launched the I forget what it was called, the parkour quarantine challenge, where everyone just put lines of them doing parkour in their house or around their house, which was a fun way for the community to come together and just, kind of share things. But then we launched the Tempest Onlines, which is an online competition that happens every month at the end of every month. And we started off offering like $250 prize just for guys, and then it became guys and girls, and now it's up to $500 first prize for guys and $500 first prize for girls every month. And everybody just films a 15-second line, submits it, and then they go head to head on a tree. So what we've done was we've created a competition culture in a time where there's no competitions. So that's helped. I know that's helped some people in the sport just stay motivated and gave them something to really like drive toward. On the other hand, we actually just closed one of our gyms this past weekend forever, because it's just, unfortunately, the rent is like $30,000 a month, and we haven't made any money in a large chunk of this year. So it just became, we gotta go, we gotta close it. So it's being demolished right now as we speak, which is kind of messed up. But yeah, so it's been tough, but we're moving forward. And I think one of the things that I guess we could talk about on the flip side of that is at our Valley location in Northern California, not Northern California, but Northern LA, up in the Valley. We just rented out the other side of the gym space, and that is actually becoming our film production house that people can come rent for, whether it's pre-visits for stunt work, or it is, we have a podcast studio there that you can come rent, and it's fully engineered and everything. So we're kind of shifting back toward that split goal of what Tempest always was like this film production and this, pro parkour team and brand.
I feel like I need to send a clip of me just jumping off my couch. I feel like that's the thing I'm
do it, man. Submit it every month. End of it.
Outside. I mean, I've seen those videos, and it's just amazing, like the family that you guys have brought together with everyone sending in their clips and the support that you guys are all getting. It shows that it's rising up in a way, and you guys aren't letting anything stop you to be able to keep it going in a way.
Yeah. Yep. Got to push. It's all about progression. And sometimes you have setbacks. Sometimes you have injuries. Sometimes but the understanding is that that's actually not a setback. It's part of the line, just.
So we talked throughout the episode about your brand, and if anyone checks out your Instagram, you're always doing these fun videos, and you're holding the camera, doing a 360 view of what you're doing. When you're creating that content for the day, you talked about finding that spot that you can challenge yourself and extend your skills. Does a lot more go into the planning of that, or you just like to get out there and do whatever trick you want to do at that time?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, certain times, sometimes I just like stop at spots, and I just like look for new spots. And if I find a new spot, it will inspire something. And then that then becomes exciting to like film at. But like right now I have 3 video campaigns that I've been approached with, and I actually just messed up my ankle a little bit. So I'm like creatively trying to figure out ways to use old footage and mix it with new footage of me talking and cut that into me moving. And you'll see that all come about. But I think a lot of like these limitations that sometimes happen with these videos, or the speed in which they need them. I like the limitation. I like that idea of having boundaries to like guide the creative process. So it's almost like the challenge in it, and maybe that's the parkour side of me, right? Like finding the challenge and then trying to overcome it is sort of turned on by it. And so it's always a different scenario. It's never like, I got that perfect spot. But sometimes a spot will like, I'll hold on to an idea and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a good spot to do this thing. Yeah.
Have you been able to balance from time with your family and work, or does it sometimes have that struggle to find that balance?
Well, it's definitely a different time of my life. I have a one-year-old baby, and I think that has thrown like a big wrench into understanding, like evaluating what is valuable to me in terms of time and energy. And so I'm finding myself doing a lot less of scrolling and watching other people's content, and really isolating the time in which I'm using for my business and career and movement. So yeah, I think right now there's a lot of pieces that are being moved around to try to understand what looks like the best looking puzzle, like I'm like, oh, this piece looks pretty good there, but I think actually it might go over here. And so right now, it's in this very particular moment, like me and my wife actually just created like a schedule. Like, what if we actually like isolated times and just see how that feels to go like, all right, you have this time to go do whatever you need to do, whether it's business, self, creative process, whatever you want to do. So we're actually messing with that right now. And I think it's opened up the idea and ability to schedule things, because now I'm not scared of like, you know, I also, in my podcast, talk about expectations. And I think one of these times is like, people have expectations about everything, right? We have expectations about this conversation. We have expectations when I drive to the grocery store, how long it's going to take me. And, if all of a sudden I turn out and there's construction or there's an accident, all of a sudden I'm sitting there for 10 minutes. Oh my God, 10 minutes, but if I told you, oh, there's an accident out there, it might take you a little longer to get to the grocery store. And you're like, all right, so you get out there and you're sitting there like, whatever, like when we set our expectations and we do it subconsciously all of the time, it just like blows our mind when that something interrupts it and disrupts it. And so I talk about expectations because like my fear for my wife is like her expectations for me. And I'm like creating these stories in my head about how other people have expectations towards my schedule that then I'm like not, I'm like feared, planning things for and whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I just went on a weird rant, but.
So what does the future look like for you professionally and personally? What are you hoping to accomplish in the next few years?
I don't know. I'm working with a company right now called Obsesh, like obsession, but yeah, you can check them out, called Obsesh. I've been working pretty closely with them for, it might even be, I don't know if it's 2 years, but it's definitely at least a year. And what they're really doing is they're taking athletes like myself in all sort of outdoor adventure action sports, even like cliff diving and surfing and all these different things, and trying to like figure out ways to give athletes the opportunity to make a living off of doing what they love outside of just doing that thing. And it's been exciting to see them try different things and develop different things. And right now there's 2 series I have on TV with them. One is called Adventure Amplified, that I host. I'm just the intro host, blah, 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 blah. And it goes into the series. And then every episode they just have like, we'll call it 10 different clips of these like beautifully shot action sports things. And it lives on a network called TBD, which is To Be Discovered. And then I have another show called The Parkour Adventures of Jesse La Flair, which is a revised version of our Off the Edge series that we had shot. And we combined a bunch of episodes, they added a bunch of new footage, and that is now streaming it's on TV and streaming. So our careers and use it again. And it kind of has shown me like, all right, what's interesting about my career right now is that I have a lot going on, but I also have a lot just that I've done and a lot of stuff that I haven't utilized to its full potential. So it's really, I almost urge everyone to look at the things they've already done instead of just grinding forward to do new things, especially in a time of quarantine where we're not able to produce new things, to look at what you have and see, like, is there more potential with this media? Is there more potential with my skill set? You know, is there my knowledge, so step back, look what you got. And so for me, next few years, I honestly, in a lot of ways, wish I could just like move to the woods, in the redwoods, and live next to a river and play with my son as he grows up and develops into a human. So I think a lot of things are just trying to figure out how to secure wealth and financial freedom, instead of just making money.
I think during this time, especially during the pandemic, it's been a perfect timing for people to almost do like a self-reflection in a way. Kind of look back at yourself and see what else can I do during this time? You got the freedom to do it and being able to plan those things out. And it sounds like you're doing that right now, because you mentioned that you have the goals of living in the forest by the river and stuff, and you're able to see how can I get there in the future, because no one knows what's going to happen the next few months. So it's the great time to be able to maybe plan and do those things. And also, you talked about making money, but a lot of people want to enjoy what they're doing, and that money is also there. But you want to wake up each day and be ready and be happy to get up and do something new. And I know for me, I've had that conversation with myself. Do I enjoy waking up and maybe sitting at home doing nothing but getting paid for it, when I'm a person that I want to get paid to do something? So it's definitely that time where you can do that self-reflection in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So the final question I'll ask you, based on your journey and experience, for someone that's listening to this interview, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Progression is key. Just understanding that every challenge you have in life, everything you come up against, there are small steps that if you take the time to understand them and work through them, that you can slowly but surely achieve whatever that challenge is. And I think that's probably enough, but I just like, I want to reiterate, like, it's so many people like, yeah, but, it's like, no, like really break it down. And maybe it's not always starting at the very first step. Maybe sometimes it's like going backwards and trying to understand it. Don't take the shortcuts, really. Just like dig in and figure it out on your own. Right.
Well, Jesse, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talk about your rise to the challenge. You inspire so many people and future athletes, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me.